No one has ever seen you. No one, not your oldest friends, not those who swear they love you, not even you, because what the world knows isn't you. It's your mask, and deep down you know this. You know it because even surrounded by people, there's a silence inside you that no one can fill, and it hurts. It hurts because you want to be seen, but you don't have the courage to show yourself. Carl Jung said, "We all wear masks, and as long as they remain glued to our faces, no one will ever see who's really behind them." When Jung spoke about the person, he wasn't talking about something distant or academic. He was describing exactly what you do now, every day. You wake up, open your eyes, take a deep breath, and put on your mask. The one that says, "I am strong, I am kind, I am fun, I am what you expect me to be." You wear it to survive, to fit into the mold, to be accepted. And one day, without realizing it, this mask clung so tightly to your face that you began to believe it was you. You smile, but you no longer know if the smile comes from you or from her. Jung called this person, because this word comes from Latin. It was the name of the masks actors wore in theater to play roles. But there was an important difference in theater. They removed the mask at the end of the play. We didn't. We kept it on. And so we live relationships that seem deep but only touch the surface. No one can love you if they've never seen you. No one can be your friend if they only know the role you play. Think about it. How many times have you hidden a tear to avoid disappointing? How many times have you held back your anger to avoid appearing difficult? How many times have you swallowed your own truth just to remain the person others expected? Each time you do this, you strengthen the mask and weaken yourself. And the worst part is that the mask not only hides you from others, but also from yourself. As Jung said, a person who identifies with their persona runs the risk of losing their soul. This is a hard truth to swallow, but it explains why, even surrounded by people, you sometimes feel invisible. Because they don't know you, they know your mask, and you know theirs. It's like a carnival ball, where no one dares take off their costume. Everyone dancing, everyone smiling, everyone pretending. And I won't lie to you, the mask has its function. It protects, it makes life in society easier. Jung didn't say to throw it away. The danger is believing it's all there is. Because when that happens, you lose your way back to yourself. You lose the chance to truly connect with someone. Look around you. That ever-helpful colleague, who never complains, doesn't he suppress his own anger? That ever-optimistic friend who never cries, doesn't she stifle her sadness just to save face? The seemingly unshakable father, doesn't he hide deep fears behind his confident expression? Do you notice? Everyone's playing the same game, and so are you. And the longer you stay stuck in the mask, the more you forget you're wearing one. The harder it becomes to take it off, because you fear not being accepted. You fear that without it, you'll be rejected, that no one will love you for who you truly are. But it's precisely when you dare to take off the mask, even if only for a moment, even if only in front of the mirror, that you begin to feel a huge weight lift from your shoulders. Because the soul isn't content to be loved through a disguise. It yearns to be seen, with its cracks, its shadows, its truth. But this takes courage, because to be seen, you must show yourself. And maybe that's why you feel so alone sometimes, even amidst hugs, because no one can love a face they've never seen, and no one will see who you are, as long as you insist on being just your mask. So today, I invite you in the solitude of your room. Take off your mask, stand in front of the mirror, breathe, and look at the one who has always been there behind all the poses, all the rehearsed smiles. See him, because only when you start to see him, someone else will be able to see him too. As Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. As long as your unconscious mask controls who you show to the world, your relationships will continue to be doomed to emptiness, disappointment, and exhaustion. But by removing the mask, even if just for a moment, you take the first step toward being seen, to truly be loved, to truly love, and to finally discover who you are. And when you finally take off the mask, what you see in the mirror can be even more disturbing than you imagined. Because behind that polite, smiling, and controlled facade lies a side of you that you've spent your entire life trying to ignore. A side made of anger, envy, selfishness, impulses you won't admit to having. Carl Jung called this in the shade, and he warned us, no matter how much you try to hide it, it will always be there, acting through you in your relationships, sabotaging your friendships, distorting your choices. You are not only light, you are also shadow, and only those who dare to look into this darkness will one day find themselves. This is the moment when many people give up, because acknowledging your own shadow hurts. It's made up of everything you've learned you can't be. Since childhood, you've been told not to feel anger, not to be selfish, not to be weak, and every time you felt these things, you pushed them to a corner of your mind, like sweeping dust under the rug. But that dust grew and became an invisible monster that scares you every time you get too close to someone. Because the closer someone gets, the closer they are to seeing what you yourself don't want to see. So you pull away, sabotage, hurt, or run away. And then you wonder why you feel so alone. Jung said the shadow is like a packed suitcase you carry but never open. But when you don't, it begins to weigh you down. It leaks into your actions without you realizing it. It's that envy you feel for your successful friend, but mask with forced praise. It's that irritation with your needy friend that only reflects your own unresolved need for attention. It's that harsh criticism of your selfish colleague, when deep down, you'd like to allow yourself to think more about yourself. The shadow is a crooked mirror. You see it in others, but it's within you. And this destroys friendships, because you're not looking at the person who's there. You're projecting your unhealed wounds onto them. You think the other person is cold, but maybe you're the one afraid to be vulnerable. You think they're fake, but maybe you're the one who can't be authentic. You think they're selfish, but maybe you're the one who never had the courage to take care of yourself. Jung said, what you resist persists, and what you deny subdues you. As long as you deny your shadow, it governs your relationships without you realizing it. This is why the goodest people often harbor enormous anger within themselves. This is why the happiest hide a suffocating sadness. This is why friendships that seem solid fall apart at the slightest conflict, because no one had the courage to be whole in front of another. And those who don't accept their own shadows can't accept those of others. So relationships become a theater of good intentions, but filled with resentment behind the scenes. And there's an important detail. The shadow isn't just made up of defects. It also hides talents, desires, and strengths that you've been taught to repress. Perhaps you have a brilliance, an ambition, a sensuality, a courage that you've learned to bury to fit into a mold. This is the so-called golden shadow, and until you reclaim it, you continue to feel small, diminished, living below your potential. I know, looking into that darkness is scary, but it's only so scary because you don't know it. When you turn on the light, you realize those monsters were just wounded parts of yourself, begging to be seen. And believe me, the more you embrace your own shadow, the less you need to hurt others. The more you embrace your whole self, the lighter you become to truly love and be loved. Only then will someone finally be able to see what's behind your smile and stay. So I invite you to take this step now. Don't run away from this darkness. Explore it. Reflect. Ask yourself, what have I been hiding from myself? Write. Feel. Seek self-knowledge. It's a long path, but it begins with a simple act of courage. And if you want to continue this journey with me, sign up here and follow me. Because together we can illuminate places within ourselves that you might never dare to visit alone. In the end, this is the greatest freedom you can give yourself, to be whole, light and shadow, light and dark, human. Have you ever wondered why, no matter how hard you try to be different, you end up repeating the same patterns in your friendships, relationships, and groups? It's as if there were an invisible script written long before you were born, and you, without realizing it, act on it every day. Carl Jung discovered this phenomenon and gave it a name: the collective unconscious. It's what drags us into the same roles, the same dynamics, the same illusions about others. It's what makes it so that, even when we believe we're freely choosing who we let into our lives, we're actually chosen by forces we don't understand. The collective unconscious is like a vast ocean where all human experiences are stored. Within it live memories, fears, desires, and symbols that are not just yours. They belong to all humanity. This is why certain behaviors are repeated in all cultures, in all eras. The child who seeks a protector, the hero who defies danger, the traitor who undermines trust, the victim who waits to be saved. We all carry within us these characters, ready to take center stage at any moment. Jung called them archetypes, universal patterns that shape the way we feel, think, and relate. And that's precisely why so many friendships seem doomed to end the same way. You believe you're choosing someone because you like their personality, but without realizing it, you choose someone who fits the script the collective unconscious has already written for you. Are you always the advisor, always the caretaker, always the giver, always the betrayer? These roles aren't chosen by consciousness, but by psychic inheritance. That's why you get irritated with those who occupy a role you yourself repress. That's why you admire those who express an aspect you don't allow yourself to experience. In a group of friends, the same pattern repeats itself. There's always someone who becomes the leader, always someone who bears the blame, always someone who entertains everyone, always someone who is excluded. These dynamics are not just the result of individual personalities, but of the collective unconscious organizing the group according to ancient, almost tribal patterns. And no one dares to challenge this, because it would be like trying to swim against a current the mind can't name. Have you ever noticed how, in times of crisis, people tend to regress to primitive behaviors? Suddenly the masks fall, and everyone clings to their archetypal roles as if their lives depended on it. The always caring friend can become hostile. The once strong can crumble and demand care. And you, without knowing why, feel you must adopt the stance everyone expects of you. Because the collective unconscious is stronger than your will. It guides us when we're lost, but it also imprisons us when we don't know it. This is the paradox, Jung pointed out. Until you recognize the power of the collective unconscious, you are not free. You think you are choosing your friendships, your actions, your reactions, but you are merely living old stories that have been played out thousands of times before you existed. The hero and the villain, the betrayed and the traitor, the protector and the protected. And all of this unfolds like a play, whose script you didn't write, but which nevertheless plays out perfectly. The most disturbing thing is realizing that the people around you don't know this either. They believe they're unique, when in reality, they're just filling a role that's always been there, waiting for someone to fill it. That's why you've probably felt that some friendships are predictable, as if you already knew the whole story just by reading the first chapter. Because you did. These stories are inscribed in the human soul, and yet within this same collective unconscious, deeper possibilities lie. There are archetypes you've never dared touch: the healer, who can forgive, the sage who can understand, the warrior who can protect their truth. They are there, waiting to be awakened. But to do so, you must question the role you've always accepted. Ask yourself, who am I beyond what the group expects of me? Who am I when I don't have to repeat the stories I inherited? Jung warned us, until you become conscious of what is unconscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it destiny. Every friendship you call inevitable, every breakup you call tragedy, every pattern you call bad luck. All of this could just be the collective unconscious tossing you around, and only consciousness can free you from this tide. This is why human relationships are so fragile, and at the same time so powerful, because they don't just involve two people, they involve two collective histories, two archetypal heritages, two worlds full of ancient symbols trying to understand each other. And sometimes it's beautiful, sometimes it's tragic, but it's always human. What remains is to have the courage to look beyond the role you've always played, to see the person in front of you as they are, not as the character you projected onto them. Because only then, for even a moment, can you find each other, not as mask, and mask, not as shadow and shadow, not as archetype and archetype, but as two human beings who dared to be more than the history they inherited. And in this encounter, however rare, lies a truth that no collective unconscious can dictate. And so even if you take off the mask for a moment, even if you have the courage to peer into your own shadow, even if you perceive the invisible patterns of the collective unconscious, there is still one final veil that distorts everything you see in others. Projection. Carl Jung said that we do not see people as they are, but as we are. It's an uncomfortable thought, isn't it? Because it forces us to accept that much of what we see in friendships, in lovers, even in enemies, is just a reflection of what we carry inside, as if the world were a huge mirror, and each person only reflects a piece of ourselves. Have you ever noticed how, sometimes, someone deeply irritates you, without doing anything out of the ordinary, or how, suddenly you feel an almost exaggerated admiration for someone you've just met? This exaggeration, whether in love or hate, is almost always a sign that you're not seeing the person. You're seeing yourself projected onto them, because the truth is, the mind can't bear to carry certain parts of itself. So without realizing it, it places them outside, in others. You criticize a friend for being selfish, but aren't you the one repressing your own self-centeredness? You're disgusted by someone's deceit, but aren't you the one afraid to show your true intentions? You admire someone else's courage, but aren't you simply denying your own? What you don't accept in yourself, you condemn in others. What you don't experience in yourself, you idolize in others. Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. And this is one of the hardest and most liberating phrases anyone can hear, because it gives us back responsibility. The enemy you hate, they show you what you're afraid to be. The friend you admire too much, they show you what you haven't yet had the courage to become. The one who makes you angry, jealous, or impatient, they're just showing you parts of yourself you haven't yet accepted. And when you understand this, everything changes. The people around you remain the same, but you begin to see them for who they are, no longer as screens for your fantasies and fears. It's scary to realize that maybe you've never really known anyone, because most of the time, you were too busy talking to your own projections, thinking you were helping, when you only wanted to heal something within yourself, thinking you hated, when you simply didn't want to see that shadow within you, thinking you loved, when you were only in love with a part of yourself that hadn't yet blossomed. That's why relationships are so intense and so fragile, because they're rarely about the other person. They're about you. People only become unbearable to us when they touch on wounds that haven't yet healed, or when they show a light we haven't yet had the courage to light. That's why friendships end in resentment, why loves turn to hate, why families fall apart, because no one stops to ask, what, in me, is this person showing me? And see, recognizing this doesn't mean blaming yourself, it means freeing yourself, because from the moment you recognize the game of projections, you can choose something different. You can breathe before judging. You can look someone in the eye and ask, truly, who are you beyond what I project onto you? This is a gesture of rare humanity, and it is also a gesture of courage. When we realize we project, we begin to reclaim the parts of ourselves we had abandoned in others. Anger transforms into legitimate strength, envy into inspiration for growth, idealized love into mature love, hatred into self-compassion. Because nothing you see out there is just about the other person. It's always about you too. And that doesn't mean people can't wrong us, that there aren't real lies, real abuses. Of course there are. But even in these situations, it's worth asking, why does this hurt me so much? What does this wound want to tell me? Sometimes the pain someone causes you is just the tip of an iceberg that was already inside you, waiting to be seen. The most beautiful thing about all this is that when you start to notice your projections, something curious happens. You become lighter, kinder, more patient with others, because you understand that they too are trapped in their own projections, blind to what they are, seeing only themselves in every face they encounter, as you once were, as you will be, from time to time, but awareness makes all the difference. It doesn't dissolve the mechanism, but it allows you to avoid being a slave to it. So every time you feel that exaggerated anger, that overwhelming love, that unfounded antipathy, stop, breathe, and ask, what is this person revealing about me? This is the question that can transform your relationships, because as long as you remain blind to your projections, you will remain alone, even when surrounded by people. So look within, look without, and don't be afraid of what you find, because in the end, it's not about perfection. It's about truth, about seeing yourself whole, about for the first time looking at someone and truly seeing them, without the fog of your own shadows. If this resonated with you, remember to like this video, not only to help this work reach more people, but also as a reminder to yourself that this path of awareness has already begun within you. Because every gesture, no matter how small, matters on this journey to seeing others and yourself more clearly. And yet, even after all this, there's still a deep, hard-to-name silence that haunts you. It's that feeling you get when you're at a party surrounded by friends, or on the couch with someone who claims to love you, or sitting at a table full of voices, and suddenly you realize no one really reaches you. You smile, you talk, you participate, but inside, you seem to be somewhere else, alone. Carl Jung called this a spiritual void, a separation from yourself that no outside company can fill. This is one of the cruelest paradoxes of humankind. The more you mold yourself to be accepted, the further away from yourself you become. The more you play the roles expected of you, the lonelier you feel, because every gesture that arises, not from who you are, but from what is expected of you, creates a chasm between you and your own essence, and no one can bridge that chasm for you. Jung said, loneliness doesn't come from not having people around us, but from not being able to communicate the things that are important to us. And how can you communicate who you are if you've already forgotten yourself? How can you expect anyone to see you if you remain hidden behind a mask, projections, and inherited roles? This is the tragedy of many friendships, marriages, and families. Everyone seems so close, yet each person remains trapped within their own internal labyrinth, talking, laughing, sharing stories, but avoiding the parts of themselves that most need to be heard. That's why so many people say, I feel lonely, even with people around. Because what's lonely isn't the body, it's the soul. And the soul isn't satisfied with superficial relationships. It yearns to be touched in its truth, in its wound, in its most intimate vulnerability. And that only happens when you have the courage to bare yourself before someone. Not to take off your clothes, but to remove your defenses, the layers, the characters. Have you ever noticed how sometimes you'd rather remain silent than say what you really think? How sometimes you smile so as not to hurt someone, even when inside you're imploding? This silence isn't just cowardice, it's fear. Fear of being rejected for who you are. Fear that no one will be able to love the real you. Fear that once seen in your entirety, you'll become impossible to accept. But the price of hiding your truth is this invisible loneliness. You're there, playing your part in the theater of life, but inside you miss something. You don't know exactly what, but you feel it, like a longing without an address. A longing for yourself, perhaps. Because when you live to please, to fit in, to not bother, you lose yourself a little each day. And there comes a time when you no longer know where your mask ends and you begin. And it's not just about you. Everyone around you carries this same secret loneliness. Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and realized that behind their smile, there was a silent plea to be seen? That's it. It's the same pain you feel. People live together without ever truly touching each other. They talk, but don't listen to each other. They share a bed, but don't share their souls. They stand side by side, but remain isolated within themselves. And this is one of the deepest causes of modern loneliness. It's not a lack of physical contact. It's a lack of emotional contact. It's not the absence of people. It's the lack of courage to show one's humanity. Because showing one's pain, one's contradictions, one's weaknesses, is risky. It's like stripping naked in a public square. And most prefer to remain protected behind a mask, even if it costs them their own hearts. This loneliness has a sound. It's the sound of conversations that never happen. It's the sound of hugs that don't touch where they should. It's the sound of forced laughter amid the fear of being forgotten. This sound hurts because it constantly reminds you that something is missing. And yet, the possibility of change is always there, waiting. Because loneliness isn't inevitable. It's just a symptom, a call to turn inward, to rediscover who you are, to one day find someone and say with a clear heart, "This is me. Not perfect, not ideal, but real. And I want to be seen that way." And in that moment perhaps you'll realize you're not as alone as you thought. Because for everyone who dares to show themselves, there's always someone who's been waiting to reveal themselves. Loneliness dissolves when two souls have the courage to meet, without masks, without scripts, without fear. But until that happens, that emptiness will continue to call out to you, reminding you that no number of friends, no crowd, no applause will fill what can only be filled by finding yourself. Because in the end, no matter how many people surround you, no one can truly be there for you if you're not there yourself. And this is where you begin to realize the reason for this persistent loneliness. It doesn't exist simply because others don't see you. It exists because you hide yourself, because there's a fear that paralyzes every sincere attempt to truly show yourself. The fear of being rejected. This fear is ancient, almost instinctive, inherited from times when being excluded from the group was tantamount to death. But even today, amidst civilization, it remains present, in the silences you swallow, so as not to seem inconvenient, in the feelings you bury, so as not to be called weak, in the limits you don't impose, so as not to be abandoned. This fear is like an invisible chain, holding you back, just as you're about to step outside the role they've written for you. Jung said that the need to be accepted makes us live a life of compromise, and each compromise takes us, little by little, away from who we are. That's why you remain silent, even when something inside you screams to be heard. That's why you pretend to be okay, even when everything inside you hurts, because showing your wounds seems too risky, because you imagine no one would be, if they truly knew who you are behind the mask. And this is a painful mistake, because what truly drives people away isn't your flaws, but the rigidity with which you try to hide them. Every human being recognizes the truth when it appears, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's ugly. And every human being, consciously or not, feels uncomfortable around someone who refuses to be human. Because behind your fear of rejection lies the belief that you need to be perfect to deserve love. And this belief condemns you to live roles that have nothing to do with you, just to try to be accepted. But no one can love a character. What we love are the imperfections that make someone real. Have you ever noticed how some people, even when fragile, even when making mistakes, manage to inspire tenderness and trust? It's because they don't try to appear anything other than what they are. It's because they have the courage to be vulnerable, to say, "I'm afraid too. I make mistakes too. I fall too." And this creates space for others to do the same. But you still carry the wound of believing that if you show who you are, you'll be abandoned. Because at some point in your past, you were. Maybe as a child when you dared to express anger, and someone punished you for it. Or when you cried and were told to swallow your tears. Or when you showed neediness and were laughed at for your weakness. And you learned your lesson, being seen is dangerous. Better to hide, better to keep quiet, better to be what they expect of you. And so you gradually locked away pieces of yourself in dark drawers. But now you're living this cruel dilemma. You want to be loved, but you don't allow yourself to be seen. You want company, but you fear intimacy. You want the truth, but you only offer edited versions of yourself. You want someone to stay, but you don't trust that anyone could stay for the real you. And this becomes even more difficult, because everyone around you plays the same game. You live surrounded by people equally terrified of showing their weaknesses, equally trapped by the need to please, equally enclosed within edited versions of themselves. This is why so many relationships feel artificial. Masks talking to masks, shadows dancing with shadows. And at the center of it all, a loneliness no one admits to feeling. The fear of rejection is like a prison, and you're both jailer and prisoner, because only you have the key to unlock this cell, but you don't dare use it. Because opening the door means taking a risk. It means facing the possibility that yes, someone might not like what they see, but it also means making room for someone to finally love what's real. And that's more valuable than all the applause you receive for playing a role well. Jung wrote, "He who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside awakens." As long as you continue seeking external approval, you'll remain a prisoner of expectations that aren't yours. But when you start looking within and accepting your own truth, something changes. You begin to love yourself, even with the flaws you once swore to hide. And when you love yourself this way, completely, you give others permission to do the same. The fear of rejection never completely disappears. It always whispers, but you can learn not to let it dictate your life. You can learn to take a deep breath and still show up, because courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is showing up, even when you're trembling. It's choosing to be real, even without guarantees. And in doing so, you might discover you're not alone. That on the other side, someone is also waiting for someone who dares to be human first. And that someone might finally see you, for real. And when finally, you dare to be seen, with all your fears, flaws, shadows, and imperfections, something unexpected happens. It's not an immediate burst of acceptance. It's not a miracle. It's subtle, almost imperceptible at first. But you notice yourself breathing deeper, that you feel less weight on your shoulders, that loneliness no longer feels so suffocating, even when you're still alone. Because for the first time, you're not trying to be anyone other than who you already are. And that in itself is a form of freedom. Jung said that the greatest tragedy of the individual is to become only what others expect him to be. But when you free yourself from that expectation, you discover what it truly means to be authentic. Authenticity isn't perfect. It's not pretty. It's not heroic. It's human. And precisely for that reason, it touches others in a way nothing else can. Because we're all tired of fake smiles, meaningless conversations, and relationships that go nowhere. The world is hungry for authenticity. For someone to say, "I feel scared too," or "I feel small sometimes too," or "I have a dark side I don't understand." And when you have the courage to say this, you not only heal yourself, you also give permission for others to do the same. How many times have you held back a thought because you thought it wasn't appropriate? How many times have you felt like sharing a truth, but held back for fear of sounding weak or too much? Authenticity is precisely the opposite of this. It's stopping editing yourself all the time. It's trusting that your pain doesn't diminish you, that your doubts don't invalidate you, that your story, even full of cracks, deserves to be told. Because it's through the cracks that light enters, as the poet reminds us, and your cracks can also illuminate someone else. When you allow yourself to be authentic, you discover a curious thing. You don't please everyone, but you deeply please those who matter. Because the right people for you aren't looking for a perfect, controlled, and predictable version. They're also looking for a safe haven to be who they are, without pretense. And this security only comes from authenticity. Have you ever noticed how some people have the ability to calm us just by being present? They don't try to be anything other than themselves. They don't have all the answers. They don't wear shiny masks. They just are who they are. And that's enough. That's how authenticity works. It doesn't attract attention by being outrageous. It attracts attention by being real. But getting there isn't easy, because authenticity is also scary. It can cost relationships that only existed because you played a role. It can alienate those who grew accustomed to loving your mask, not you. And it hurts to realize this. It hurts to realize that sometimes people don't want to see the real you. They just want you to keep playing the role that comforts them. But it's also liberating to realize that these same people never loved you, only what you represented. And that's precisely why authenticity is a game changer. It separates what's true from what's always been an illusion. It transforms the way you see yourself and how you see others. Because now you no longer seek friendships to hide behind. You seek connections where you can be whole, where you can laugh and cry without censoring yourself, where your shadow has space to exist without being condemned, where your light can shine without being extinguished. Authenticity also teaches us something fundamental, that there's no way to be truly loved without showing your whole self, and that being rejected for who you are hurts less than being accepted for who you're not. Because when you pretend, even if everyone around you smiles at you, you still feel alone. But when you're real, even if someone leaves, you're at peace, because finally, you're whole, and that's priceless. Jung reminds us, he who looks outside dreams, he who looks inside awakens. Authenticity is exactly that, awakening, opening your eyes to yourself and realizing that you didn't come into this world to be perfect. You came to be whole, to live your own truth, not the expectations of others. And perhaps you're feeling a certain discomfort right now, a desire to say something that's been kept hidden for a long time, to show yourself a little more, to share a part of yourself that no one has seen until now. I understand. This is the first sign that something inside you is ready to emerge from the darkness. Don't fight it. Speak up. Say what you feel. Say what this encounter with your own truth has reminded you of. Because each word spoken with authenticity resonates deeper than 1,000 rehearsed words. And sometimes, all someone needs to allow themselves to be true is to hear you be true first. Because that's how it begins. One chooses to be authentic and gives the other courage to do the same. Until finally, two human beings can meet without masks, without fear, without reservations, just them, whole. And that in itself is a miracle. And when authenticity blossoms, you begin to perceive a new landscape around you. It's as if the landscape you've lived your entire life isn't exactly what you thought it was. Relationships change. Some people reach out unexpectedly, almost with relief, as if they were waiting for someone to finally break the silence so they could be themselves. Others, however, begin to pull away, uncomfortable with the fact that you're no longer willing to be the molded version they wanted, and it hurts. It's a process as painful as it is necessary. Life removes from the path what wasn't meant to stay and brings in what truly can. Because being whole comes at a price. It's not easy. It's not easy. It's not easy. You have to let go of the idea of being loved by everyone. You have to let go of the illusory comfort of pleasing everyone. You have to accept that not everyone can bear to look at someone who dares to be real, because it forces them to face their own falseness. And not everyone is ready for that. Being whole is, above all, an act of quiet courage. It's choosing the truth, even when a lie seems more comfortable. Jung reminded us that all individuation, this process of becoming who you truly are, inevitably puts you in conflict with the collective. Because the collective expects conformity. It expects you to stay within the norm, to keep saying yes when you want to say no, to keep smiling when you want to cry. And you begin to realize how all social bonds are, at their core, made of this implicit exchange. I won't show my cracks, and you won't show yours. When you break this silent pact and begin to show your flaws, you also threaten the fragile balance everyone was trying to maintain. And that's when the masks fall completely. People reveal their own shadows when you reveal yours. Those who only wanted your mask walk away. Those who wanted the whole of you stay. This hurts less when you understand it's a natural process, that you're not losing. You're finding, because those who can't stand your truth never really stood you, just the illusion you peddled. This is a learning process that takes hold gradually, like someone realizing one morning that they no longer carry a burden that once seemed impossible to let go of. You wake up and feel a different kind of silence. A silence that isn't loneliness, but peace. The feeling that you no longer need to convince anyone of anything. Not that you're good enough. Not that you're perfect. Not that you deserve love. You simply exist with all that you are. Light and shadow, beauty and ugliness, strength and fragility. And that's enough, for you. And for those who truly matter. This is the kind of peace that doesn't depend on others. Because others can't give you what you refuse to give yourself. If you don't accept who you are, You'll always ask others to do it for you, and you'll always be frustrated because no one can sustain this mission. What you expect from others can only come from within. When you accept yourself fully, something changes in your relationships. You stop demanding that others be perfect to deserve your love. You stop expecting others to fill holes that only you can fill. You stop seeking in others the approval you never found within yourself. And when this quiet peace begins to blossom, you also understand why it's always been so difficult to feel truly intimate with someone. Because intimacy is only possible between two whole people. While you relied on masks to protect yourself, you could only find masks on the other side. While you hid your cracks, you found only superficiality. Only when you embrace yourself completely do you open the space for someone else to do the same. And then something rare happens. You find each other. No more roles, no more projections, no more expectations. Just two human beings, imperfect and true. This is the kind of encounter that heals old wounds, that gives meaning to the loneliness you've experienced up until now. Because now you understand loneliness wasn't a punishment. It was an invitation to return to yourself, to stop running from your own truth, to be ready for a love that wasn't an illusion. Jung said that there is no awakening of consciousness without pain, and you feel it in your skin. Every friendship lost, every relationship transformed, every discomfort that arises when you choose to be who you are, all of this hurts. But it also cleanses, it also liberates, because in the midst of this process, you discover something precious. You no longer need to beg to be seen. You no longer need to shrink yourself to fit in. You no longer need to beg for love where there is only need. You just need to be you. And that, as simple as it may seem, is the greatest gift you can give yourself. And so amidst all the departures and reunions, amidst the shadows that still insist on appearing, amidst the fear that still whispers sometimes, you take a deep breath and realize you are whole for the first time. And that is enough. And when this peace begins to settle within you, even if still timidly, you discover another inescapable truth: to remain whole, you must learn to be silent. Not just the silence of words, but the silence of expectations, the silence of performances, the silence of everything that was once just noise to fill the fear of being alone. Carl Jung used to say that the soul needs solitude to flourish, and for the first time, you begin to understand what he meant, because it is in silence, and only in silence, that you can finally hear yourself. At first, it's not easy. Silence is frightening because there are no distractions. There's no audience to smile at. There's no one to applaud or reject. There are no excuses to keep pretending. There's only you with all the pieces you've been trying to put back together, and that's simultaneously terrifying and liberating. You realize that all the noise that once surrounded you, the opinions, the judgments, the expectations, served to drown out the very voice that deep inside insisted on calling out. That voice was always there, but you mistook it for fear. It wasn't fear, it was you, asking to be heard. Silence isn't comfortable because it exposes everything you've avoided feeling. When you stop running outward, you inevitably encounter what was left behind. The parts of yourself you abandoned to please, the truths you swallowed to avoid rejection, the pain you ignored to keep smiling. All of this comes to the surface, sometimes all at once. It's as if the shadows you've hidden for years sit beside you and say, "Now let's talk." And that's when many people give up. They turn on the television, open their cell phone, look for someone to talk to, anything to avoid facing what emerges in the silence. Because silence is too honest for those who still want to deceive themselves. But for those who remain, for those who take a deep breath and allow themselves to stay, silence becomes a refuge. It ceases to be solitude and becomes an encounter. Because you're not alone when you're with yourself. In fact, it's only in this state that you can truly feel accompanied. You realize then that most of your relationships were in fact desperate attempts to escape yourself. Every forced friendship, every empty conversation, every bond maintained out of fear of being alone, all of these were crutches to avoid facing your own company. And now you understand There's nothing wrong with being alone. On the contrary, only those who sustain themselves alone can sustain something with someone. Because those who don't know how to be with their own soul inevitably turn any relationship into an escape. And in this silence, you begin to hear not only your pain, but also your deepest desires, the ones you stifled to fit into the mold. You rediscover little things that once seemed unimportant, the joy of an afternoon with nothing to do, the pleasure of writing something no one will read, the beauty of simply breathing and feeling enough. You reconcile with who you were before the world taught you to pretend. And this restores a quiet joy, one that depends on nothing but what already exists within you. Jung said, "What you deny subdues you. What you accept transforms you." Silence is the space where you stop denying everything you don't want to see. It's there that you accept your contradictions, your light and your shadow, your strength and your fragility. And it's precisely by accepting that you begin to transform, because you can't change what you haven't yet acknowledged. And suddenly, things become clearer. You begin to understand that you no longer need to lose yourself in the noise to feel alive, that you no longer need to cling to relationships that only exist to distract you, that you no longer need to fill yourself with applause that doesn't nourish you. Silence teaches you that you are already enough, even with your flaws, even with the parts you still can't deal with, even with the pain that hasn't yet healed. And this changes the way you look at others. You no longer need them to save you from emptiness, because emptiness no longer scares you. You no longer need them to fill your gaps, because you've already learned to live with them. You no longer need them to validate who you are, because you've already done that for yourself. That's why silence isn't the absence of life, but its origin. It's there, in that noiseless space, that you finally hear what your soul has always been trying to tell you, that you are already whole, even if you don't know it yet. And that from then on, any love, any friendship, any relationship that comes along will be merely a compliment. Never again salvation, because you've already found salvation, in silence, in yourself. And after all this journey, something begins to change in the way you live. There's a lightness, almost imperceptible, in the way you occupy the space around you, a quiet serenity in the way you look at people, a calm confidence in the sound of your own voice. You become someone who no longer needs to prove anything to anyone, because you've already found within yourself everything you sought in others. Carl Jung said that he who looks within awakens, and you now understand what that means, not as a concept, but as a living, felt, real experience. You realize it's not just about taking off the mask. It's not just about recognizing the shadow, understanding projections, challenging the collective unconscious, or overcoming the fear of rejection. It's not just about learning to be silent. It's about what comes after all of this. The courage to be seen, whole, just as you are. No disguises, no excesses, no less. You and only you. When you reach this point, the world begins to react differently to you. Not because people have changed, but because you have changed. You no longer need to beg for attention, compete for affection, or beg to be included. You no longer despair at the possibility of being misunderstood or abandoned, because now you understand, no one can take from you what you have already achieved within yourself. You have become enough. And paradoxically, that's precisely when you begin to attract deeper, truer, more human relationships. Because people sense when someone has made peace with their own essence. They sense when they're faced with someone who doesn't expect them to fill their emotional holes, but who welcomes them as they are. You become a kind of beacon for those who are still lost, and without realizing it, you begin to offer others what you've spent your life asking for yourself permission to be who they are. And this is perhaps the greatest transformation of all, realizing that being seen isn't a privilege others grant us. It's a choice we make, every day, by deciding to show up in the world without masks, without fear, without shame, for our own humanity. You now know that you didn't come here to be perfect, to fit anyone's expectations, to fake a light you don't have or hide a shadow that's always been there. You came here to be whole, and whole you are. So take a deep breath now. Allow yourself to feel this comfortable silence within yourself. Allow yourself to realize that you're no longer pretending. Allow yourself to accept that you no longer need to beg for love. Allow yourself to be grateful for having come this far, for not giving up on yourself, for having the courage to look within even when everything hurts so much. You did what many people spend their entire lives avoiding. You saw yourself, and that's priceless. And now that you've seen yourself, you're ready for something greater to be seen by others, by those who truly matter, by those who also allow themselves to be seen, by those who also have the courage to show themselves. It is in this encounter between two whole beings that the rarest and most beautiful kind of human relationship is born, one that demands nothing but truth. I want you to take this feeling with you that you are no longer adrift. You belong to yourself now. You own your own story. You no longer need to get lost in crowds to feel valuable. You no longer need to wear a mask to be accepted. You have already accepted yourself, and that changes everything. And if this journey touched you, I want to hear it. Comment below what this video sparked in you, what reflections it brought, what memories it brought back. I want to read you. I want you to allow yourself to write no matter how imperfect or vulnerable it seems, because every sincere word is an invitation for others to recognize themselves as well. And of course, if this resonated with you, please like and subscribe, because this is just the beginning. There's still so much we can explore together, so many truths to illuminate, so many shadows to embrace. Every step we take together makes this journey lighter and more meaningful. Feel privileged to have stopped to listen to yourself today, because not everyone has that courage. And I also feel privileged to have walked with you this far. May you never forget you are already whole, and you are already enough. Always have been.